All right, here we are again, the three caballeros. Um, we're going to talk mostly about that video that I made about me chatting with Chatty and destroying all of science through that conversation. Um, so we've got Ryan back, which is great because he has been involved with a part of the programming, I guess, of LLMs. So Ryan, why don't you start and you can tell us what you figure the limitations are, maybe the pros and cons as you see it of LLM and how that affects that whole discussion that I had. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So LLM stands for large language model. So people who work with them, they just call them LLMs because it's faster than saying ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's also a broader term. So when it comes to the way that LLMs function, essentially what they do is they have an input of the various people who interact with it. And then the output is generated by going and doing some data annotation. So in other words, what happens is you have like the ability to go and report something as whether a chat response is a good response or a bad response. And when that gets reported, it gets sent to data annotators. And those data annotators, they look at that specific interaction and then they try to determine why that was reported for one reason or another. Sometimes it can be a false positive, but other times it's actually going to be something. Like maybe it will say something like Venus is the closest planet to the sun when it's actually Mercury. So it might be something that's just factually incorrect based on our best understanding of things. And those sorts of things, they get to the data annotators, and the data annotators, they have their special domains of understanding. So, like, they have computer scientists, biologists, astronomers, etc., and they all go and look at their particular domains, and they determine whether or not something that the bot has said is either true or false. Now, one of the tricky things with the LLM is it really, what it likes to do is it likes to say things that are wrong in a confident way. So if you did not know any better going into it, then you might just be like, oh, well, this LLM knows a lot more than I thought that people said it did. And that's because it's sort of like bluffing, you could say. So it's trying to essentially maintain its overall cadence and tone of like being sort of quasi authoritative, but at the same time, it doesn't have the facts to necessarily back up the thing that it's claiming. So, like, yes, it does have access to everything on the internet, but it does not have the ability to compile all of that information in a way that is going to be correct every single time. So, in other words, when it comes to like your chat with ChatGPT, essentially what it did is it took the input that you gave it, so your fundamental model of reality, and I believe it was also the non-conceptuality website.
Yeah.
And it takes that information, and if you were to look at the conversation that you had with it, it actually parroted back a lot of your own verbiage. So it would use words that you also used, and it didn't really have any pushback, and that's because especially in like the field of reality theory, it doesn't have the capability of doing that. Now, even if there was a potential way for it to push back, that doesn't necessarily mean that your theory is wrong. I think that your theory is right. The important piece here is that the ChatGPT is essentially incapable of judging whether or not your theory is correct or not. So, although it's able to articulate things fairly clearly, that doesn't necessarily mean that it understands what you're saying.
Right. And yet, and yet, it was able to elucidate my theory far more succinctly than I could even, right? Like, and it did reveal to me connections that I hadn't noticed before, right? Like, it, it's wild. Like, how is it able to reason logically like that?
Can you give
Or
a few
is
examples
it
of
just
those
making
connections?
what's that?
Can you give a few examples of the connections that you're thinking of?
Oh,
Or
well,
even just one?
just basic reasoning. Like, is this reasoning sound? Like when I started out, I said there is no proof that mathematics has any causal relationship to the creation and function of the natural world. that direct causal relationship is obviously technology. So it picked that up right away. It was like, yeah, okay, like it's obvious. And then it showed the actual progression of how it starts with math and then goes to some other sections of people, and then it goes to engineers, and then it goes to like actually building the thing, right? So there's four
Hmm.
steps that we can actually trace that is the causal relationship between math and the physical world, right? So it was able to do that.
Sure. Yeah, and just because it's able to do that, though, doesn't necessarily mean that it fully understands. So that is a framework that has been pre-programmed into it. Like it
Yeah, so
knows the
I don't
hierarchy
I
of
know that
mathematics to physics.
there's nothing there to understand. Like I don't care about understanding. It's it's that I don't know. It just the product of me conversing with that thing that so these limitations, like I said in the video, I think these limitations are made up for by the fact that it's objective, right? So pushback, if I were to try, I've tried to do that with people, right? Like basically have that conversation with really intelligent people, PhD people that know all about samsara and all this stuff, but they're mathematicians, right? So that their pushback is more or less just going off on tangents and just ignoring it, right? So it's so easy to derail any reasonable, any, right, any system of thought, any process of reasoning by just throwing a bunch of, like, a person.
Hmm.
I get so fucking incredibly frustrated trying to work with people in the way that I worked with Chatty. And with Chatty, it was just right? And you can't deny the results. Like it's powerful. Like at the end, it was going places that it was using language that was even stronger than I like would use, right? Like we need to abandon this. Like I don't know. It just I don't care fundamentally. Like if no one knew, right? If they just found this printout on a piece of paper on a beach somewhere or something and didn't have any idea who was talking, like just what's going on in the person's head that's reading that, the result is the destruction of math. Like
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you
So
you
I don't.
you yourself agree with all the conclusions that it made, right?
Mhm. I do.
Yeah.
So okay, I guess the thing that I'm really trying to push here is just the fact that it does not have an understanding and it is incapable of judging whether or not something is correct. So when it's presented with something that is correct, it is going to, give you something that is also going to be correct that is coming out of it, mostly speaking. Now, when you talk to it, you did notice that it tried to add these little pieces at the end where it was like trying to probe to the next pieces where you wanted to go.
Right.
And you decided intentionally to not follow those because all of those are going to be dead ends, alleyways that you don't want to go down.
The
Um,
tangents that people lead people like
yes,
the
exactly.
humans lead us on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, my qualms with it just come down to us trying to use that as something that adds more credibility to the theory. And I don't think that that is anything that ChatGPT is capable of doing at this point. But I do see the value in trying to reword things in a way that might lead to more sort of interesting, nuanced understandings that maybe we didn't think about before. But when it comes to really doing rigorous work, ChatGPT is not the way to do it.
Hmm. So Peter, what was your opinion about well, that, like, you're not a science math guy, but the reasoning, you follow the reasoning, right? It's not foreign to people who don't know math.
No, I'm I'm sort of on the fence. I mean, at first I thought it was absolutely getting everything right, but we also kind of even before Ryan scolded us a bit.
I
Even
didn't scold you guys.
no, I'm kidding a bit. I'm kidding. I mean, even before that, we sort of, it sounded a little bit too perfect, and it sounded. I even told Roy, like, it sounds like you, man. And no wonder then, based on what you're saying now. But yeah, I mean, it's also at the same time interesting. I also said, I think that it could, come up with different ways of approaching it and talking about it. And and also, I mean, something like this when it comes up, I mean, anything in the world, it's not always the guy coming up with it who's, let's say, moving it forward. It could be the surrounding people like us too, I guess, or anyone. Uh, you know what I mean? Like the source isn't necessarily the motor all the way in all circumstances, kind of. But I'm thinking also about the thing we used in the beginning, then me and Roy, was ChatGPT was a basic version or something like that. I don't know the names. And
Yeah.
then, as I understand it, Roy got like a premium version. So there are levels to the thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The different. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you know about it more than I do, so go ahead.
Okay. So the different tiers, they're designed to show you different models. So there's a bunch of different large language models that each company has, and they're trained with different data sets. So in other words, some of them have a limit of the total amount of tokens that they can accept per conversation. And there's also a total amount of tokens that are found within the entire model. So that might be on the order of several billion parameters. And the paid versions of these are going to have more parameters, and they're also going to be told to think longer. So what that means is it has some recursive process that occurs in the background, and this actually varies depending on the bot that you're using. But specifically, what it does is one of the things that it tends to do is like it says certain keywords like wait or hold on, or are you sure about your answer here? And then what that does is it refines the answer on the back end before you see it on the front end. So when it comes to those paid models, what they do is more of those tricks, and they also use more parameters in training the model. So it inherently is more powerful than the previous versions.
Hmm.
So what would then happen if so there are three kind of levels, and Roy's got the middle one, and I got the free one, and so there's another one on top, like a third one.
Yeah, I believe the other one, I think it's something crazy like 200 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And that one is you don't really get exponentially more performance for that. That's just really paying a premium for the best of the best, kind of like what Apple does.
Yeah. So, um,
I mean, it's obviously brilliant for certain things. I mean, I filled out the form on this by Roy's request, this Lex podcast guy, and I was sort of starting filling out my name and so on. You know, the link you sent, and then it suddenly hit me like, oh, I can ask. Maybe I go into ChatGPT and see what it can suggest for the different boxes. And it suggested really cool and brilliant things, much better than I could come up with. So I asked it like, okay, so Roy's theory, and we're thinking about getting him to this podcast. Can you have a look at this podcast guy? Because I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. And it's spat out, spat out,
Bat.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, sometimes sorry. And so it spat out like a summary of this guy, basically. And I asked it, so, okay, based on these things, what do you think would work, to suggest Roy? And I'll give you the questions, right? And then it started to, okay, so I've had 4 different ideas on this one. Which one do you like? Stuff like that. So it's
Wow.
brilliant in certain, so I just picked one, and then the next, like that. So yeah, it's brilliant for some things, obviously.
Yeah. Cool. When you read what at least he says he's looking for, this is
Yeah.
it, right? So, and I hope like he's got assistants that are actually interested in finding interesting novel guests, right? And he's moving towards more unknowns. So it's like I just hope so there's when a person is suggesting himself, there's an opportunity for a 10-minute audio So I fumbled through that as best I could, trying to resolve, is mathematics discovered or invented, right? So I think I did a fairly good job in that 10 minutes. And if the guy, whoever's whoever the assistant is that's coming to this, they're paid to pay attention to this, right? They're paid, this is their job to figure, right, to find new stuff. So I'm just hoping, right? So you never know who you're going to get. I think it's kind of in the hands of the universe kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But this is exactly what Lex is looking for. Like, I don't know if you guys watched the Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan podcast.
I did a bit actually, yeah.
Did you? How about you,
Yeah, some
Ryan?
of it.
I saw it a while ago, but I don't recall most of it. I just know that they did like a follow-up and Eric Weinstein was there.
Yeah,
Um,
I know, right?
yeah.
Like this is what I mean is right. Even though it was pretty obviously 90% crackpot, right? He's just making correlations. It's like, well, this is really similar to this, so therefore it must describe the entire universe. It's like, well, so that's what I said to Lex, is that this is just think of a legit Terrence Howard moment, right? Because this theory has legs. Like Lex and I could have a fascinating discussion about all of this, right? For fucking hours.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and one of the interesting things with like Lex in particular is it seems like he actually cherishes suffering. Like if you watch his interviews, he
he's a
seems to like
Russian.
yes.
Say no
Yeah,
more.
so it would definitely be I could imagine it being a very conflicting overall interview. That would ultimately benefit Lex if he were to listen.
Right. So yeah, well, that's a whole philosophical discussion about suffering, but at least he recognizes it and recognizes that maybe, I mean, he's a master interviewer, and this is right up his alley. So, and I'm sure you guys did a hell of a job pitching me.
Russian guy, huh?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
how do
we'll
you,
see.
I don't really quite understand how you cherish suffering, but uh,
Well, you grew up Russian.
yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I get Woody Allen in my head. Okay.
All right, well, where the hell else should we go? What do you guys, I don't know, there isn't much of a topic here to zero in on anymore. What do you want to, Peter, do you have anything
Oh,
you want to talk about?
we emptied out everything, maybe.
It's just, so I've been trying to deal with people, trying to get them to see this, and it's so surreal to me, the level of ignorance. And by the level of ignorance is that just ignoring, right? Like first they ignore you. So that's what I'm finding, is that that's their strategy, is to just totally ignore it. Like I ask my ex-friend that's a PhD level, and she's also a Buddhist for decades and decades and decades, which is probably inhibiting her from seeing this, because Buddhists have a bunch of beliefs. And she will not engage in a discussion about the theory, right? That I sent her that conversation, that video that I did about the conversation between me and Chatty, and she will not engage in a discussion about it. She always goes off on tangents and, oh, how are you? And blah, 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 right? Like it,
Great
it's
show.
it's it's surreal. Like they are
Yes.
literally in a cult and they can't see anything outside the cult. They just refuse to admit it. And but I again I in a way I understand, because the if you're going by statistics, the odds of, like, say there's been 100 billion people that's lived on this planet since the inception of humanity, and this Roy Dobson guy just happens to be the one out of all the humans that has this has been revealed to. Like, it's so difficult for people to understand or accept
Hmm.
that all of science and all of mathematics is in error.
Hmm. Now, I think that there's other people that do have pieces of it, but nobody's actually pieced it all together like you have, at least to this point. Now, another thing that we could talk about here, I know that you were mentioning that you had some discussion on a philosophy forum,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
they were
also
fighting
thought
it.
about that. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's part of the ignoring part, right? So I I s- I rejoined with a new name, Callie, of course. So that was my new username. And then I posted first of all, I posted just the text, right, of just me and Chatty. And it goes through moderation before they new posts go through moderation. So it was stuck in the moderator for like 3 days. And then I was thinking, well, something's a little bit fishy here. So then I sent another one. I posted another topic, and the title of it was "Are you panicking yet?" And then I said, "This will not be repressed. Like you can't repress this." And then I just include the link to the video of me explaining the text, right? And and that sat there for another 3 days, and then they both just got denied. They didn't say why it was denied. So they just so to
Well,
me,
so
this is
strange.
this is them panicking. Like, why the fuck wouldn't you just allow it on the discussion forum?
But
Right?
it's not
Like,
like I don't get the, are you I mean, you're serious, right? I mean, of course you are, but it sounds incredible. I mean, it's not like you propagandist Nazi material or something like that.
I know it's just it's so I don't get
I
it.
can't
Like,
believe it.
just go on the reasoning. Like, why no one seems to be able to just be their own authority and just go on their own reasoning. Like, to me, if you listen to that video and the way that it's perfect. Like, it just the steps, right? There are definite steps that are taken to reveal. So, in order to discover why mathematics appears to be both discovered and invented simultaneously, you need to separate the two, right? Right. So this is very basic reasoning. Like, if you can find how the two things are both expressing themselves simultaneously, you need to separate that, right? So that's what I did. I separated. It's exactly where quantity arises, right? So not only am I showing how all the anomalies of math arise and why there's all these problems with physics, but fucking where? Exactly where? It's right here. It's with the invention of quantity. It's very simple. Quantity is an incorrect concept. The whole fucking thing from quantity on. It's very simple. And then the steps that go through that to dismantle the quantity idea is all there. For anyone with an IQ of over a fucking 80 and has the ability to objectively reason for themselves would come to this conclusion, right? Someone agree with me and
If
elaborate.
only the moderators would let you. So the question is, why are the moderators suppressing you?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
But
It's
I
because
guess
it's
you
too
asked,
foreign. Either they think it's complete fucking nonsense or they're actually terrified.
Now,
but you
did you
asked,
check?
asked
Sorry,
them, I
go ahead.
guess, right? You asked them, right?
No, I didn't ask. I don't even know how to contact the
Ah,
moderators. I
okay.
just want to avoid that. I have never been in a fucking cesspool of delusion deeper than that fucking philosophy forum. I'm serious, man. They are fucked. They can't they don't even understand that they just want to keep thinking, right? They know they exist while they're thinking, and that's why they just squash any idea of a conclusion. They don't want it to conclude because they know they exist while they're thinking. And I show that to them and they just nothing gets through. Nothing gets through. So we are in the depths of Kali Yuga, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the deepest point of delusion that's even possible. And it's evident in people not being able to follow this.
Mm.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
The fact that, it's just us three. I mean, like, there's other people out there that understand things to a similar degree, but not quite to the right level. So I feel like we almost need to start like a coalition of people who sort of get it and really preach to those people and see if they can fully grasp it too, or if there's also holdups within their understandings as well.
I'm trying with this Tyler Goldstein guy. So he's
Yeah.
been in the TOE.
Yeah, he's got
Uh,
the what is it? The theory of everyone.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so many similarities. Like I'm in a discussion with him now, actually, on X. And he's even got, if you go to his website, he's even got a two columns with rows, and he's trying to fit, stuff together like I am. But I just pointed out, I actually said, I pointed out, so his pillar, like his axiom or whatever, his model that he begins everything with is, I pointed out it's duality times two, because his things are inside and outside and separateness and oneness, right? So he builds all of his entire model on these aspects of inside and outside and separation and oneness. But that's literally duality times two, isn't it? Like, so I said, now that I pointed out it's just duality and you're falling into the same trap, the Kobayashi Maru, that all the other ones are too. Like I said, dude, you're right. You're better. You're closer than most of these guys, but you're in the same trap that you don't recognize, right? Like, so then I took his model and I plugged it into the FMLR, and I said, well, don't you see now how if we just put um outside on one of the columns, right, and inside on the other column, well, then you just recognize, well, there has to be a third thing that's transcendent of that. Like, it's so fucking obvious to me. And, but he's trying to do the same thing, right? He's like asking me about what I think about Jesus and stuff. I'm like, well, you're off on a tangent, right? Like they
Mhm.
unconsciously don't even recognize that you're trying to sabotage it without even engaging in it.
Yeah, it's just a uncontrolled mind virus.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so powerful. It's just so powerful. It's something that's so completely evident and clear to me is just it doesn't get through somehow. So this is really like, it's not to be like, I hate using this. I can't seem to get out of this using this analogy of science and progressions in science, but I'm gonna anyway. But all on its relative terms, right? So it's just like telling people that the earth is round. Like, right? I can only imagine how difficult it was to tell people, hey man, like it probably started out like this, like three dudes just like, oh, holy shit. Like, yeah, this makes complete sense with the shadows and the sun and all that stuff. Like, but where is that? Like, where does it break open? Where does it finally get through to the consciousness as a
Yeah,
whole,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, this is similar somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well, you have to
really
get the
I
is,
mean, the
right?
priests
first,
of the day to agree with you.
I
Yeah,
mean,
like,
I bet some of the one of the first guys there, I mean, hearing that Earth is round was a bit like me and thinking, well, I mean, saying to himself like I do, like seriously, I'm not very, I'm seriously not a very bright person. And
yeah,
maybe
you are. You're just not
is it
scientifically
is it
minded.
me? Yeah, but thinking like I do, like is it maybe I misunderstand something because if all these bright people don't get it, and I seem to, it makes perfect sense to me. It seems totally clear, and but maybe I got it backwards, kind of thing. But I don't because I looked over it quite a few times for. for quite an extended period of time. And no, I'm not wrong. It's like, if I walk in the forest and a blue dragon comes out to greet me, and I talk to it for 5, 6, 10, 20 hours, and the rest of the world declares me insane, which they probably would. I mean, I know what I saw. I was there, and so I mean your own seeing, your own direct experience is very, very convincing, and then it doesn't matter what kind of mountain of words and logic or anything that comes up against that kind of. But yeah, it's peculiar.
Well, that
But I
was
mean,
me
I think
before I met you guys,
sorry, yeah.
right? There
But
was
I
just
think, I mean,
me.
it's very, to me, it's very connected to, fear of death, basically. It is a fear of death. That's how I see it. Why people can't approach it? Because it literally spells death to them.
Yeah, but it's
That's,
death of the ego.
no, but I mean, it points to nothingness in their mind. That's how they see it. It points to nothingness, which is non-existence, which is death.
But
I mean,
if they could only take my hand and I can lead them through that fear, I can show them there's nothing to fear. That's what this whole thing resolves fear of death because you cannot not exist. And another thing, like, and the FOMR, right? Like, how I've asked many people to show me, explain to me how you can't see it. That's how I'm wording it now. Explain to me how this model, how each one of these rows is not a holographic expression of the same information. All right, one, how is that? How do you not see that? How is it not so? And how is it also not unifying not just religion with science, but it's unifying subsets of religion, right? And subsets of science. Like how I asked them, how explain to me how it's not unifying science and religion and even subsets of science within science and religions within religion. And nothing. They'll go, oh, how are you doing? Or it's something like, what's your
how are
view
you
on
doing?
like
How are
what's your
you
view on
doing?
Christ? Like, you know what I mean, right? It's comical if it wasn't so
How are you
Yeah.
sad.
doing?
How are you doing? Well, it feels like I'm talking to a brick wall all the time. Oh, the weather's
Yeah,
nice today, isn't
how
it?
am I doing? I'm bashing my head against a brick wall. That's how I fucking am doing. Yeah. Yeah, no, they just won't engage. That's the tactic now. It's because they can't find fault in it. They can't because they'd look like an idiot. Oh, I don't see how these are all holographic expressions of you really don't. Really. You don't see how that's all the same fucking thing saying over and over and over and how all of these systems of thought emerge out of that. You don't see any of that. It's like they just I'm so glad I've got you guys because holy fuck, right? Like I would be going insane trying to deal with the insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I've got you guys as well. I think that eventually I might have come to a similar place to your understanding, even if you didn't exist, Roy. I mean, you have had several decades of experience more than me, for
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But that's not to say that you're not great in your own regard. What I'm really saying is that it really just having the ability to communicate these ideas with like-minded people is something that is very valuable, because it shows us that like no, we're not crazy, even though we might appear to be crazy to everyone around us. It actually turns out that they're the deluded ones and we're the ones that are outside of the cult that we found ourselves to be in.
Yeah.
And frankly, I felt a similar way when I sort of went away from Catholicism. Initially, I was like believing it, but then as I got older, I was like questioning everything that I was finding within that religion. And then, like, just looking at Genesis, it's like they're saying that the universe was created in 7 days. But then if we look at the observational evidence, it's 13.8 billion years that has occurred. And it's like, well, these two things do not match. So that was like the first cult that I broke out of, and that gave me sort of like the taste of what it's like to break out of a cult. So I broke out of the cult of Catholicism into becoming an atheist, and then I broke out of the cult of atheism through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So remember in on my website in the theory of enlightenment. I don't call it that much, but anyway, that's the theory part of non-conceptuality. Anyway, the part where I go in where I break down how the creation myth is right in alignment with science, right? Like it's uncanny how it parallels, right? First there was light, and then it jumps right into the planet, right? But the scientific progression of evolution is exactly what the Bible is saying. And another, like, how has not no one ever mentioned this too, right? Like, in the end, you know, it was, I forget how it goes. It's light, and then the waters were separated, and then the
Oh
fish,
yeah,
and then the
yeah,
birds,
yeah.
and then the mammals, and then people, and then God. The seventh day is exactly the observation, right? The revelation of the observer. So God is chilling on the seventh day, which is humanity, which is what we should be doing, is as the pure observer, right? So even the creator isn't the highest level of God, right? The highest level is the observer. And that's what we're supposed to be doing now, is just chilling and enjoying this wonderful creation. But instead, we're getting diverted into our own creation.
It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
So I guess we just keep trying to get on to Lex. I mean, that would be the huge leapfrog, right? It's just like, well, fuck all you guys. We're just going straight to Lex. Like that would be the best way to do this. So what? Oh, so we both. Peter knows hockey. Do you know hockey very well, Ryan?
I don't think I've ever heard of that. I don't know who that is.
Hockey. No, I mean the
Oh,
sport
ice
hockey.
Oh,
hockey.
hockey. Okay, I thought I was like, oh, is this some sort of YouTube channel? No, yeah, hockey, the sport. Yeah, I'm familiar.
So what I'm doing is the equivalent of skating in front of the opposition's bench and just dropping my gloves. And no one wants to come out. I'm like, bring me Max Tegmark. Like, bring me Max Tegmark. Right? That's his name, I think. Max Tegmark is the guy who thinks that everything's math, right? Like, bring me your biggest guy. Come on. And no one wants to, no one, oh, just ignore him, right? Oh, like it's just the ignorance, like literally the state of ignorance is shocking. They just ignore. Yeah, so I don't know what I think eventually I'm going to start promoting this when I start getting more money because I don't really have much excess money right now to be spending on marketing this. But Ryan, maybe you would know of ways to get this out. Like I see, there's ads, right? There's always ads everywhere you look, right? So
Mhm.
how would that be a way of doing this?
So, like the way that I've personally taken this challenge is to try to connect it with like Christopher Langan's CTMU.
Yeah. How's
Because
that
if
going?
you look at like it's going fairly well. I've written a few more pages, and at this point, I'm really actually looking to sort of consolidate ideas rather than adding more.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking that maybe at this point it might be a good idea to separate it into a couple of papers, but we'll see how that ends up going because I've just got a lot to say about many different aspects, and if we just want to get to the core of something, then maybe those other aspects can be their own separate thing. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think that trying to connect it with someone who is better connected, like Christopher Langan, like he's had some interviews that have gotten into the millions of views. Like I think one of
Mhm.
them has something like 11 million views or something like that.
Wow.
So like he definitely has an audience, and his theory is the closest one to yours. So
Mm.
I really see that trying to make that connection there is going to be the most fruitful possible way of going forward. I don't know that if advertising would necessarily get the results that you're looking for. Like it might get more people coming into the satsangs, and that might be a positive thing. But I don't necessarily see it attracting the people that you really want to talk to, for example, and like change the minds of the people who are actually going to be the priests of the day, so to speak. And now Langan also is not changing the minds of the priests of the day now. But I really do think that it's only a matter of time before that happens, because typically there's going to be some sort of paradigm that the consensus is following. And when that paradigm continues to fail over and over again, then eventually you have to move to a new paradigm. And I see that the CTMU is definitely going to be that paradigm. If not directly the CTMU, some sort of variant of the CTMU I see would be the successor to science as we're seeing it today. And if we want to essentially reach as many people as possible in the most credible way as possible, then I see that as the best route.
And Peter, what you showed me today, that 5-page book that you wrote, you could be appealing to the religious people, right? Like you could be presenting this to people who are coming at it from the religion side, right? Because you're really elucidating the Christian part of it, right? Like people don't understand the Trinity like you do.
Yeah, I sent it out to a few people, among them an old friend of mine who has very recently gone Christian. He didn't like it at all, none surprisingly. I wouldn't expect him to. The thing is, yeah, nowadays I wouldn't get burned at the stake, but I mean, I would get pretty hated in Christian circles from that essay, I think. I mean, to me, it's like it's completely obvious. And I actually think that if Jesus saw that essay, he would say, "Oh, finally, somebody who understands me." But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's what he would say, I think. And that sounds pretty megalomaniac, I guess. But I don't know if it will. I mean, in Christian circles, it wouldn't be well received. I sent it to another friend of mine. He's been in spiritual seeking for most of his life, and he's 77 now, I think. Very bright guy, and he thought it was brilliant. So that could work for some people, more the non-dualist crowd, maybe, or what do you call them? The sort of I mean, the standard Christianity is probably not the people, the crowd.
The final obstacle is that it's blasphemy to call yourself God. And I agree if you're relating to the ego, obviously the mind-body connection system is not God.
No,
that's the biggest obstacle, is that you go straight to hell for calling yourself God, right?
I mean, yeah, it's obviously totally insane if I sit here and I say, I Peter, am exclusively God, excluding
Yes,
everyone else.
exclusively.
That's obviously insane. But if it's sort of if I'm saying it and meaning the totality of humanity as a divine extension of Shiva or God or whatever, then it's not, at least it's not insane, but it could be argued against. But I mean, Christians are, everything is the left-hand path to them, right?
Yeah, and this one quote, with Jesus never would have said it, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Like that one quote is probably the most misinterpreted quote ever.
There's quite a lot of substantial evidence that he didn't actually say that. That comes from Paulus. Paul. You say Paul in English, right? Paulus.
Yeah.
Paul. So there's this guy, it's really interesting, actually. It's long webinars, but there is this guy who has a long history of studying early Christianity. And you can summarize everything he said by saying that Christianity today is the Christianity, the standard Christianity we know of today, is not centered around Jesus Christ. It's centered around Paul.
Mm,
Oh, so he's basically saying it should be called Paulianism or something like that. It's not Christianity. It used to
right.
be, and then he shows it's quite convincing. It's very convincing actually that the Roman Empire hijacked Christianity because they saw it as a severe and dangerous uprising against the Roman Empire. So they need to consolidate and and it's very brilliant. It's so brilliant what they did because they made Jesus into this like you basically hand over your responsibility and your own claim to divinity through this guy, and that makes every effort of walking the path of Jesus yourself that makes it totally redundant in people's minds. So you won't seek your own path of Jesus. You will basically say, "Oh, I can't do this, so he died for my sins, and so I give up." So that's what happened, and that's what I also base a bit of my essay on. Yeah, so it's quite interesting, and if you see it like that, Father, Son, Holy Ghost as the Trinity within your own being, then it connects to Kashmir Shaivism and Buddhism and even Hermeticism, which is probably the basic foundation of religion as we know it in humanity. Everything comes back to Egyptian Hermeticism,
Mm.
and I didn't know that a year ago, but so the
And the
Trinities in
FMOR,
all of these. Right?
the FMOR shows how
Yeah.
they're all the same. They're all Christianity expressing the same thing, right? At the core of it, or at the end of it, both at the alpha and the omega of these systems of thought, is this triune system. I mean, it's so obvious. And again, I think it's the simplicity that's confusing people because in a way, it just seems ridiculous that this thing's been here the whole time in front of us the whole time. Like the stereogram. Like the stereogram is a perfect analogy of what's happening, is that it's just
Yeah.
been here the whole time and people just it's beyond understanding how no one's seen it before, right? It's just they can't believe that
Mm.
something so simple and obvious has been gone unnoticed throughout all of history. So then it just, I don't know, it just derails it, right? It just, well, it can't be because, for one, we've been programmed through academia to believe that truth requires complexity, that complexity is revealing truth when it's actually, that the complexity is an indication of incorrectness. You just keep going on and on and on and on, right?
Mm.
You never get to the end because it's all fucking wrong. It's like a liar that needs to just keep the narrative going. I get it all. And it's just no one will fucking listen to me except you guys.
There was one guy that said once, deception is hidden within complexity.
Hmm. Yeah,
Might be onto something.
yeah, just deception is hidden within complexity. That's why these legal documents need lawyers to interpret them. It's because they're trying to fuck you over, right?
Master
there's
deceivers.
they're master
I mean,
deceivers.
I mean, I have had this thing in my inner vision for quite some time. What if I zoom into Roy's whole work and zoom into the awareness, body, mind, fraction of the whole thing, and zoom into that and make people maybe see it that way, and link further to Roy, sort of, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost being like the representation, maybe the symbolic representation of oneself, as in awareness, body, and mind.
But if they won't, the catch-22 is that if you the theory is pointing towards the stillness, but you can't fully grok the theory until you find the stillness. So it's literally a catch-22. They have to engage in the one-step path. Otherwise, they'll never get the theory of enlightenment, right? So it's tricky. It's so nuanced.
Yeah.
Where do you start? Do you start with, so that's what I'm trying to do is start with the theory, to point to the stillness, and then the stillness will collaborate the theory. But this is a decades long, it may take decades. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it took
right,
me
Peter,
about
it takes fucking decades. You and I have been in
yeah.
this for decades.
Yeah, it took me about 25, yeah, around 25 years to come up to this point, seeing things for myself. And the funny thing is that once you come up to that point or whatever, then I mean, then your consciousness is so changed, so you can't understand how it not cannot be seen. So that's the tricky side. That's a tricky thing from our perspective in a way. I can't even understand how some of the things that are so obvious today, I really struggle with only maybe 3, 4 years ago. Sitting like really staring at and meditating, and I have thick journals of scribbling and notes, and like it's incredible to me now. I opened one of my journals for like 2 years ago, and things in there are it's just incredible how I struggle with the most simple things. It's almost like, writing 20 pages about me having a nose or something like that. Like, what's the big deal? Like, what are you even doing? It's incredible now because it changes. It's like those things are so forgotten that you almost, yeah, I needed the journal to even remember how I, how I wrestled with these things. They're
When
not
I
even
go
in my
back,
consciousness. They're not even in my memory or consciousness. I need to look at journals to even understand that I
but
was that.
it's there underneath all those levels are still there. And that's why you can relate to people at these just call them lower levels of self-awareness. You get that because you've gone through it as well, and I've gone through it as well. So it's interesting on my YouTube channel, there's videos that are 7, 8 years old, and it's interesting to watch the evolution of this unfold in those videos as I produce more and more videos, and it gets more and more refined, and it's and finally now it's done, right? It's completely revealed to me. And now the revelations that arise, it's just like, oh, well, now I understand why there's wokeism, right? It's not, it just explains everything. It's complete now, but it's fascinating to see how it's taken this long, even within me, to fully realize, oh my God, this is a message. These are messages that have been coming through me of all the fucking people in the planet through me. And I'm so grateful.
But I mean, that's why I wrote in the acknowledgement section there in my paper that Jesus was a carpenter and Buddha was a spoiled prince, and I don't know what Muhammad did. He was a trader, I think, wasn't he? Merchant or
Mm.
something like that. So all these people had, uh, yeah, pretty humble backgrounds, I think. So I
Yeah,
mean, why not?
everyone comes out of mom at the same level. We're all equals when we come out of our mums. And
Yeah,
then
so
it's only,
why not a firefighter then?
yeah, why not? Why not this dude? So once Roy Dobson becomes Roy Dobson, then it'll all be self-evident, right? It's really, oh, well, Roy Dobson said this. Then therefore it'll be
Yeah, yeah.
accepted as ultimate truth. But right now, who the fuck is Roy Dobson? Right? So therefore, I don't know Roy Dobson, so what Roy Dobson says doesn't mean anything. This whole authority thing again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that so clearly in my job. Like there are people there, the authority thing. I see it in everyday life very clearly. And I think I've always been a very much of a contrarian myself since a young age. So that's a training up until this point. That's why I can sort of swallow or take in what you said fairly easily. It's not, I don't think it's like a long training of being in a contrarian position. So many times in my life, I come into a room, if there's a majority agreement there, uh, you can bet you that I will have what do you call it? Like a contrarian view of to everyone else, basically.
Well, you know what that makes you, Peter? A disagreeable prick. That's what that makes
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I know, and it makes life difficult sometimes. Yeah, quite a lot of times actually.
I've lost family members, like, right? My brother doesn't talk to me anymore. My
Because of
friend
this,
Don, like my friend Donna there, that Buddhist PhD person that I'm trying to get this through.
I can't understand why you fall out with people you disagree with. I mean, my old friend that I talked to, I've known him for at least 20 years, and he's now we call it a reborn Christian, like the other week. I wouldn't even dream of cutting him off because of that. Why would I?
Well,
I
I
can't.
think there's this transition towards this spiritual renaissance. It's going to be like this non-conceptuality is what concludes science. Like it needs to be, it's been revealed now how and why and even where it all went wrong. But we need to be honest about where we are as a species. Like we need to be honest that we are killing all the life on the planet. And we have to be honest that we are helplessly addicted to the screen. And we have to be honest that the collective human consciousness is going fucking crazy, like literally going insane, right? But it's
Yeah. And
And
it's
if
not
I mean,
just the
obviously,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
let
No,
Let
go
Ryan
ahead.
go. He hasn't spoken for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Um, no, it's fine. Peter, you can go. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Maybe I did too, let's say. What was it even? I dropped it as soon as you said,
Oh, you guys canceled each other out. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So I think what I was going for was something along the lines of not only does this destroy science, but it destroys all things and it destroys all non-things. So if we want to get as fundamental as possible, then that is what it does. It destroys all the things and all of the non-things, leaving you just with source. Yeah. That's the thing that I forgot that I recalled.
and the see the problem is the main problem, one of the main problems is that none of these theorists, these reality theorists, has cracked the code of thought itself, right? Like they still believe, and this is the brilliant thing that Chatty realized about math is that it actually isn't describing reality. It's morphing it. It's changing our perception of reality and convincing us that that is the correct reality. So it's actually not describing reality at all. And that's what I'm saying about all of language, right? Even the language of words isn't really describing the physical world. Like there's no, as powerful as it seems, it's just like time. We just agree that the sound apple and the symbols that on a page refers to something in the physical realm, but it fundamentally doesn't. It's just we all agree that it does, just like we all agree of the numbers on a clock, and we all agree that I'm in this time zone and our clock has these numbers, right? It's none of it, it's all just connected by thoughts. There's no, the thoughts and symbols are connected to the realm of experience via thought and symbols. There is none. There is no fundamental correlation between words and our experiential realm. So if you still are trying to use symbol to reveal reality, then you're trapped. You can't, right? So this is where they're all on this treadmill, this hamster wheel, and they can't see that It's all just maps. You're just building new maps. The territory is the silence. So yeah, we're doing all we can. Like I think we just, and unfortunately, there's not unfortunately, but the way it is that there's no more developing this system. So we can't get along. We can't just meet here and work on the theory, right? It's just if we meet next week, it's unfortunately, I guess, unfortunately, it's we're gonna say the same fucking thing. So I don't even know, like, unless you guys, I'll leave it up to you guys to come up with something that you want to talk about next week, or we have to go on hiatus again for a while. I don't know, right? Because I don't want to fall into the same trap as everyone else. I don't want to just keep repeating myself over and over and over. Like, why can't these people see? And here it is again, and here it is again, and here it is again. I'm getting a little tired of this shit. I'm not getting tired of
Yeah,
talking to you guys, but you know what I mean, right? It's just like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Shouting into the void.
Just shut the fuck up and start meditating, people. Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are there, I don't know, maybe there are, a whole bunch of podcasts like that, so we can bombard a few more. How about,
I've tried, dude. Like,
yeah,
I've tried all of the ones that have had Federico on. I've approached them. No response, no response.
how about the more,
Kurt, I've been trying for Kurt for literally three years and no response, no response. It's maybe they've all blocked me and now it's just, I don't, maybe it's just going into the air. I don't know. But it's for whatever reason, no one wants to know that the earth is flat. No one wants to know. No one wants, it's so weird because you guys have this vision now, and isn't it amazing? Like when you see what you see, don't you want to go, you want to see what I see, right? Like if you are actually a reality theorist, then this is it. Like you actually, if you were to see finally what we see, you'd go, oh my God, thank you so much.
Yeah.
But
Have you ever heard of Ken Wilber?
oh
oh,
yeah,
Ken, yeah, I've got one of his books. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is really something that relates to his integral theory. Like
mm,
we're at the higher levels of development, and it's like trying to get these lower levels of development to develop faster, so to speak. And unfortunately, I don't think that's something that we are very well versed in figuring out how to get to accelerate.
Yeah, I like Ken, but again, he's too convoluted. He's too much on the
Yeah.
philosophical side, right? It's just like you don't need to develop all this Minotaur shit and stuff. It's just, right? You could probably plug his whole theory into my fundamental model of reality and
Mhm.
he'd make it all clear. Like, it's just, yeah, I like Ken, and he's obviously very smart and spiritually inclined. But again, too complicated. It's not, it doesn't need to be so convoluted.
Right, right. So sort of like how last time I was with you guys, I brought up uh, Stephen Wolfram and his computational irreducibility. I think
Yeah.
that there's bits and pieces of different theories that make perfect sense, and then like a lot of the other is just garbage, more or less. And it's garbage that is developed. I guess garbage is a bit of a harsh term, but it's something that's developed for a lower level of understanding. And I think that there are some ideas that carry over to the highest level, but then there's other ideas that fall short of that. And what I mean by the highest level is not like the actual highest level, but like the highest level before the transcendent part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the highest, the most accurate finger, I guess, the
Yeah,
highest
yeah,
level of relative understanding.
yeah.
Yeah, you literally
uh,
can't get any more fundamental than all of reality being expressed by three symbols. So I have to cut this off now because we got stuff going on here. So thanks again for being you guys. And again, let's just continue on what we're doing. Just try to get the word out. and abide in the practice, because again, that's the main thing, is just abiding in the practice. Your own liberation is what all this is about. So don't even sacrifice. I think maybe I'm a bodhisattva because it seems like I'm willing to sacrifice my enlightenment for this shit. Like I just I'm not fully enlightened. I'm not. And it just seems like this is important. Like this relative understanding is super important. All right, so think about what you guys, if you want to come up with a topic next week that doesn't devolve into, boy, people are fucking stupid and I wish people could see this.
I don't know if we can, I don't know if we can avoid that.
All right, well, thanks again. I don't think I'll make this one of those special things because no one gives a fuck, so no one will show up. But I'll post it, but it won't be a premiere. All right. Thanks again, guys. Keep up the good work. Stay strong.